Yeah, I think you go back to January and you really look at like a whole new team in January, and then you have some additions of some high school kids and some late portal transfers when you get to June. And so, in the past, as a head coach, I always really leaned into the off season as a time where we could build a team, do a lot of team building events and spend time together outside of this facility and outside of weightlifting. And I kind of said, well, the hell with that, because I don't have my team until June 1st anyway. And so let's spend this time thinking about who do we want to go through this journey with in this 2025 season. And it starts with discipline and accountability, and those that show those types of qualities and live to our standard throughout the course of the winter, they get the opportunity to be a part of this journey starting in June. And so once we got to June, it was about immersion, trying to really get ourselves into a position where our kids had to get to know each other. Whether that's the Mount Rose hike, that was a long deal and it was hard. But it was good because when they got to the summit, they got to see Tahoe on one side and Washoe Valley on the other, and I think they understood the purpose behind that. Doing fly fishing lessons, going to the Reno Rodeo, doing the softball game that we do with the first responders, and really kind of forcing them in a bunch of different ways to spend time around each other and have some fun. And then grind when it was time to grind. And now it's, hey, the honeymoon's over, it's time to go to work.
Yesterday, Chuba and Thomas both said finish. That's been a key word this off-season. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, I don't even think it's like almost goes without being said. We lost 6 games by a score or less, all in the fourth quarter, and we picked a lot of different ways to lose them. And so I think it comes back to discipline and accountability and preparation. You do those 3 things, now you've earned the right to finish. And so that's going to kind of be my theme as we go through fall camp.
How important has the emphasis on penalties been?
No, I think a lot of it. We just eliminated some of the biggest culprits. That was probably the biggest thing we did. Hey, you make a mistake, you get emotional, whatever the case may be, but when you repeatedly have the same lack of discipline and it's hurting the organization, that's not good enough. And so I think that was the number one thing. You send a message that behavior is not going to be accepted, and so we're just going to move on from individuals that are going to exhibit that behavior. And then we're going to require the off-season to be about accountability and discipline so that they develop those calluses, both mentally and physically. They know that this is how we operate, and in critical times, I've got to make good decisions. And when the game's on the line, you can count on me because I've shown you that you can count on me over the last 9 months.
How much further ahead are you from this time last year of what you want this program to look like?
Yeah, I think it's light years. Year one and year two. Year one, you're always drinking out of a fire hose, and you're trying to figure out, number one, what works here at the University of Nevada that's different than maybe some other places that I've been. Who are the type of kids that can have success in that community, in that environment? What are the most important things that I got to get accomplished? You're building a staff. You're identifying the support staff, how that needs to be put together. And then you're obviously trying to implement scheme and standards and expectations and build a culture. And we're not there. We haven't arrived by any stretch of the imagination. But, if we're climbing up the mountain, we're definitely further along than we were a year ago.
What does a successful season look like?
Go to a bowl game. I think that's the goal. That's at the top of the pyramid. I don't control what bowl game that is, but if we put ourselves in a position where we get to 6, 7, 8, 9 wins, we're going to have that opportunity. And that's going to always be a challenge. I would think that, even Spencer would probably say the same thing. Like, he doesn't control whether they get into that CFP at the end of the day. That's a committee. And so I think all of us probably have similar goals. Like, let's go to whatever bowl game they say we got to go to, and let's try to win that sucker.
Your thoughts just on the House settlement now that it's been finalized, just the revenue sharing aspect?
Yeah, I think that's the first domino that needs to fall, and I'm glad it finally did. I can only speak to the challenges that we've had internally, just in terms of, you're trying to meet payroll with third parties that, they have real jobs too. They've got other things that they've got to do, and so, what constitutes an emergency on our part does it on theirs. And now to put that over and allow the school to be able to handle that, I think it's better for everybody involved.
Jason X mentioned this a couple times. Obviously, he was on staff with Ash, and then he came into Montez and all that. He said a couple times, he did him kind of solid and said, hey, I've had my own coaching for 20 years, so I was never going to be a head coach and all that. He said it's one of the best things that kind of happened. He got to go to South Dakota.
Right.
Do you remember that conversation?
I do. Yeah, I do. And then I remember he probably wasn't super happy with it initially. And then a couple weeks later, he's like, hey, my wife need some boxes. And I said, well, come over to the house. We just moved. We got plenty of boxes. And actually, my wife and his wife have struck up a friendship. And, I have a ton of respect for the job that Jason did at Idaho. And I think he's a good dude, man. Like, I like a lot of the coaches in this league. I mean, I think there's a lot of kind of old school guys that have kind of climbed their way up the ladder. Not a lot of guys that were born with a silver spoon in their mouth. They've just, they understand the West. They understand what it means to kind of put your time in. And I think they're in it for the right reasons in terms of still, in spite of the landscape of college athletics, that you can still have an impact on young men's lives. And so, I appreciate and respect that.
You talked about it more last year, obviously, but I mean, like, you were a guy that Montana State and DC at Texas, and same deal, went up to USC after North Dakota State and all that. Jason was hired straight from the FCS level, and that's, I don't know if it's becoming fully a trend, but do you think it's kind of swinging back to where it could be easier to get a job from the FCS?
I don't know. It wasn't easy for me. I interviewed for a bunch of them, and I got told you better go get a different logo on your lapel. And so maybe, maybe the success, the trend of, hey, yeah, this guy has had coaching experience. Like that was, I mean, I'm sure Matt would say the same. And in fact, we talked about it yesterday in the weight room. Like that, he saw what I did, and he's like, okay, that's what I'm going to have to do. And worked out great for him. And I'm happy for Coach Eck and the opportunities he's getting at New Mexico. And there's a lot of really good coaches at a lot of different levels that you don't have to be at a Power 5 to be a good football coach. And so, but I think it's about fit too. I mean, obviously there's probably some connectivity to that administration or something that I'm not aware of that would make sense. In my case, Stephanie Remp had been an assistant AD at the University of Washington when I was there as an assistant, and so our paths had crossed a little bit, and she was aware of me, and she knew people that she could reach out to, and I'm sure there was some kind of connectivity there with Jason as well.
I'm sure when you were at Montana State and you're playing South Dakota State, you're not thinking about like, oh, this is a Jason team or anything like that. But do you, I mean, just given the experience you had with that program and all that, coming into working on Siegel, who's a legend in
Yeah.
respects. I mean, what do you think? That kind of gives lends him to running New Mexico and get him up.
Well, I mean, he's got some. Obviously, he was heavily involved in constructing the offense as the offensive line coach and then the coordinator eventually. And so I always thought they were really creative. They did a great job utilizing their tight ends, and they had some tremendous players there at tight end. And that was one of the things that I remember about that. They do a good job formationally. They can put you in some binds with some unbalanced stuff that they do. And so, I think the things that I think about is, hey, he's going to run the ball. He's not afraid to use the quarterback in the +1 game. Right, and he's gonna present problems to you formationally that he sees on film, and so, like any good football coach, that's what you're gonna get week in and week out. But I also think that, his guys, they play a certain way. I mean, he's an old Wisconsin line guy. I mean, he's gonna get after it a little bit, and that's kind of what he brings to the table.
Feels like there's a vaguely more Midwestern feel. He's a Wisconsin guy. Obviously, Sean Lewis is a Wisconsin guy, though it's not typical Midwest offense by any stretch. Hanks is an Iowa guy and all that. I mean, just bringing that element to the league. Have you kind of felt that or noticed?
Yeah, I'm a West Coast guy. I'm a Rocky Mountain region guy, so I take pride in that. I don't really care about the Midwest that much, to be honest with you. So I think we got a pretty good brand of football without them having to. They can stay in the Midwest, That was their opportunity. No, I'm kidding. It's funny you say that because I always felt like whether I was going to play North Dakota State or South Dakota State, I didn't really know guys on those staffs, and I thought it was very interesting because that's kind of that tree is a little homogeneous, right? Like they kind of all stick together and stay together. And I'd coached at Florida, Texas, Washington State. I've been a lot of different places, and I hadn't really kind of crossed over with guys like that. But then, you start butting heads with them in the playoffs, and you're like, these guys know what the hell they're doing. This is an interesting group, and whether that's Chris Kleiman or Matt Entz or Jason Eck or Sean, I don't think he necessarily fits in that same mold, but I didn't know he was from Wisconsin, so thank you. Jay's a Midwest guy, so yeah, there's a lot of that. And I think a lot of it comes from the success. A lot of those guys have ties to the North Dakota State or South Dakota State programs, and so I think that's the tree that it comes from, and it's a pretty good tree to pick from.
Along those lines, you've been a lot of different places, Utah State, one of them. Did you ever cross paths with Bronco Mendenhall locally? Why do you think he's been successful? He be successful?
Yeah, I've crossed paths with him here and there, I think Bronco, he's just a good football coach, man, and he connects with people. He's a relationship builder. I think Logan is a great fit for him, for a variety of reasons. And, I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I think this is probably a place where he's going to hang up his whistle at some point in time, and I know he'll leave it better than he found it.
Mm-hmm. Coach, can I ask you a little bit about the process of scheduling future conference
Is that handled entirely by the athletic director? Or do you have a voice in
Yeah,
scheduling?
we have a voice in scheduling games, but you got to remember football's scheduled so far out. My first scheduling will be in 2027, and so although we swapped a game in 26, and so there'll be one opponent there. But my philosophy has always been you play an A opponent, a B opponent, and a C opponent, meaning that hey, you're going to schedule up. You may go get a paycheck or whatever the case may be. I don't think we should be going to the Eastern time zone to do that. I think we can do that a little closer to home, but that's not my call. I didn't make that decision. But that A opponent should be somebody that I think regionally makes sense, and as long as they're going to let us, we're going to play some of these money games, right? And so that's an important part of it. A B opponent to me would be, another group of 6 opponent that is a quality opponent where that win could mean something for you down the road, and then a C opponent, a scheduling opponent that is going to be, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for us to get a W in the column and hopefully not get beat up physically too much. So I think that's the right way to approach it. I think we're trending towards that more.
And then as you see some regional schools like UC Berkeley, Stanford playing a lot of their games on the East Coast, does it open up an opportunity for you to make schedules with them in their region?
Yeah, and we're definitely looking to do that in the future. There was already some schedule. There were some things on the book already with I think USC and UCLA, and in the future, and then also with the University of Utah is one that we've engaged with.
And then my last question, if I may, in terms of offense, defense, who's calling the plays? Is it
Kane Ione is our defensive coordinator, and then David Gilbertson will be our offensive coordinator.
I meant in terms of play calling, would they call those plays?
I'm not understanding the question.
Are you going to be doing any offensive?
Do I get involved? 100%. 100% I get involved. But I stay in my lane as much as I can. I feel like I hired those guys to do a job, and I need to let them do it. I probably would lean in a little bit more. I know this is going to sound funny, but I probably lean in a little bit more on offense than I do on defense because I feel like I can look at what they're doing as a defensive-minded guy and say, this is going to give them problems. Go to this play.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that relationship with Matt Entz? What was it like observing the success from afar, and what do you see for?
Oh, I got to see it up close. It wasn't fun. Yeah, no, we played him I think in the quarterfinals one year and the national semifinals another. My last 2 years at Montana State, and going to Fargo was not fun. And Matt's teams were physical and fast and athletic, and they had great quarterback play, and they were formidable for sure.
Taking that jump from FCS to FBS, what do you think is the biggest challenge, or maybe the biggest misconception about that challenge?
Well, coaching's coaching. It don't matter if you're coaching at Folsom High School like Troy Taylor did, and 5 years later, whatever it was, he was the head coach at Stanford. So I think that's I don't know that that's that big of a challenge. I think that the recruiting is a little bit different, but he got a taste of that when he went to USC, obviously. It's very different at a place like USC. And I think the regionality is probably the biggest thing that he had kind of the sweet spot. They went over to the Twin Cities there, and they got a lot of really good football players, and now he's kind of just got to put his spin on how they're going to brand themselves in the Valley. And I think he's done a good job of building a staff that has familiarity with that region. And I'd say this. The biggest difference is that if you're playing at the elite level of the FBS, you're making adjustments every series. If you're at Texas and you're playing Alabama, they're going to have something for you to correct after every series, right? I'm not sure that when you're just, and a credit to everybody that is from, Coach Bull to Coach Kleiman to Matt Entz, when you're playing when you're that much better than everybody else, you probably don't have to do that as frequently. Okay, so I think that's maybe the difference, that there's the talent level is going to be a little bit more equal, and that's going to require you to do a little bit more in-game adjustment.
Last question for me is on the scheduling note. Fresno State is on your schedule. How do you coach your players to get ready for that environment, and how would you describe that environment to those who haven't experienced it?
There's a lot of vitriol in that environment. Walking from the visitors' locker room down the ramp is. I think I was there before they started doing crowd control. I think I might have got somebody got my hands on me a couple times when I was walking down there. But it's a. I hope they have some barriers now. Hopefully that's up. But it's a unique experience. I think it can be intimidating if you're not prepared for it. And so I think I've got to do a good job of setting the stage. There's just not a lot of guys on a roster that played there because the team that played there 2 years ago is not the team that I'm going to be bringing there this year. And so fantastic environment. I think one of the best in the league, one of the best on the West Coast. They've always had a lot of success there, and so we'll look forward to it. Oh, thank God they got something. Yeah.
When you look at a lot of the one-year players like Jaden Smith, Cortez Graham, guys that you brought in last year, just how important is it to try and get the most out of those guys because you only have them for 1 year?
Yeah, I think it's a two-way street, really. I mean, it's not just that we need to maximize their talent and their ability, but they're very motivated to do the same. A lot of these guys have aspirations to at least try to get a chance to continue to play football, and we're providing that opportunity for them, and so they're motivated too. They work. Those guys are usually the ones that are setting the tone for us in a lot of ways, and so I think that's not a bad thing. I mean, and they bring experience from other places, and like Jaden was not the same kid that he was when he came to Montana State when he was 18 years old. When he came back to me as a 22-year-old, and so I think there's a lot of value in that their journey. I think that. If we're doing our job correctly, they're being able to tell other guys in the locker room, like, hey, look, I've been other places. Like, these guys are taking care of you, and you got to do what he's telling you to do. This will get you the opportunity you need. And so, like I said, I think it's a double-edged sword where it's like those guys want to maximize because they know their clock's ticking, and then that helps us because we can get the most out of them.
What do you think it's going to take just to develop more of those freshmen?
Yeah. I think that's going to be a critical part of our success, an ability to get off the field on third downs. We were one of the worst teams in the country on third down, and if you can't affect the quarterback, you're not going to be very good. And so I think some of it starts with personnel. I think Dylan Lebabara, who's emerged for us at the end of the year, will bring something to us there. I think Jonathan Maldonado's had a tremendous offseason. We're counting on him to take the next step as a player in our program. And we went out and signed 2 guys that have played a bunch of football, one from an FCS level and Sam Cook, who transfers from Southeast Missouri, and then another from an FBS school in Miles Williams, who comes to us from Cal. He's coming off a knee injury, but when he's healthy, you look at his 23 tape, he's got the ability to make a difference. So, we had to invest in that position, and we had to develop that position, and so we feel better about where we're at there. But that's what it's going to take is, those guys have got to be – if we can get to home with 4, that changes the whole equation, right? And I think that the other piece of that is we got to, and we did a pretty good job of this last year, we got to be able to cover. And we replace our entire secondary. And so, that's the other piece of this is, like when people say, hey, you're going to be picked here in the league. Well, a lot of that has to do with what you bring back, right? Nobody really knows what you have. They know what you're bringing back. And when you look at it, I mean, I think what 9 of our 11 starters on defense are gone. And so you're going to look at that. Well, that ain't a bad thing when you finished where we finished on defense. And so sometimes it's addition by subtraction, if you know what I'm saying. And so that's kind of I think that's going to be a net positive for us. I like this group of kids. I think we went out and we upgraded in the back end in spite of, hey, Mike Coates was a great player. But the only guy that we have that I don't feel like we could replace was the one that got drafted. And so that's, Keaton Crawford's a different type of athlete, and that's why he's playing in the NFL. And so that's, I feel like we're going to be a better defense because we have better players. We're a faster team, we're a longer team, and we better be a more disciplined team, and I think that'll lead to some success.
Is that a lot of just, Kane Ione and Joey Thomas working with that group to try and get all those new guys on the same?
Yeah, we get a lot more access to kids than we ever have in coaching, and I think we've tried to take advantage of that without wearing these guys out. But I also think sometimes you got to be in modern college football when you have this small window. Hey, we're going to have this guy for 6 months, or maybe you're only going to have him for 4 months, whatever that case may be. You got to simplify a little bit, and that's hard for coaches. We all want to have this cool blitz or this cool play, but I think sometimes that's the ultimate in sophistication is how can I streamline this and dumb it down and maybe make it look like something else, but it's just call mama and run the same damn play, just make it look different.
You mentioned the poll a little bit. Do you have thoughts?
No, I told our team on Monday. I had a team meeting when I got back from vacation, and I said, hey guys, where are we going to be picked in the Mountain West? They know what other people think of us, and we kind of like that. We're just little old Nevada trying to just keep a football program rolling up there. We'll see if we're able to do anything. And but like I said, I think the majority of what the media is looking at, and you'll see a lot of conferences are no longer doing this, by the way. A lot of because last year I think Arizona State was picked 14th, and it was a long climb for them to get into. That's dead last in the Big 12, by the way. long climb for them to get into the CFP. So there's not a lot of value for the individual institutions or really the league in it. But you're going to have polls, and people like to, prognosticate and talk about it. And I mean, gosh, you guys wouldn't be able to spend a couple days in Vegas if we didn't. So I think it is what it is, and I think a lot of it, when you're looking at it, you're going, okay, we lost our top 2 receivers, our quarterback, our top rusher, right? 9 of our 11 starters on defense. Of course, you're going to say, well, these guys don't bring anybody back. It's like we're only going to play with 2 guys on defense, evidently, and nobody on offense. So how are we going to win a game, right? So that's kind of what I think of it. Like whatever. Yeah.
On that note, though, last year you guys gave ESU a pretty good Royal scare when it came to that game. Do you feel like you've been at least a little bit higher? You're really being what is now, right now, has been the number 1.
Yeah, I mean, we played every bowl team in the Mountain West last year. We lost 6 one-score games, which led the country. We put a pretty good scare into SMU week 1. They ended up being a CFP team. We lost. We went into the fourth quarter with leads against Fresno State, San Jose State, and Boise State, and lost all 3 of those games. And so it comes back to discipline and accountability, right? A play here, a player there, a call here, a call there, a penalty here, whatever the case may be. And so, yeah, I mean, candidly, I don't think this is an indictment on any of our players. I think it's an insult to me. That's how I look at it. Like, I've been doing this 30 years, and I've been pretty successful everywhere I've been. And so, my team will play like I coach them.
I think with that being said, too, this is going to be the last time. You guys have a rivalry, ESU, Nevada. It goes back to, 1971. It's been a long time coming, but now the changes coming to the Mountain West, definitely people Pac-12, I guess. How do you feel? The rivalry kind of gets put to an end this year?
Well, I have a lot of feelings about this in general. I'll say this. What I hurt for is I hurt for football on the West Coast. And it started with the dissolution of the old Pac-12, and this is just the next domino that fell. And it's I think everybody pines for the regional rivalries, and everybody wants the good old days, and unfortunately that's not where we exist right now. But I think there should have been a better way to make this work, because I don't think either one of these, whatever these conferences are going to be in the future moving forward, are as strong as they would have been if we'd have found a way to stay together. And it was pretty simple. Hey, Oregon State and Washington State, why don't you just come over here? Instead, we had to go through this divorce and create all these weird feelings. And I'll tell you this, that football coaches room is pretty united, pretty good group of guys. I think that maybe they should have put us in the room and let us figure this out. And so, but I do feel bad for football on the West Coast.
Back to this again. Boise State, so that's why we're kind of on that. But you also used to be a part of that coaching staff. So
I wasn't a part of that coaching staff. I was a part of another coaching staff at Boise State.
Yeah. So I guess just kind of the change of things. Are you looking kind of for all these new fresh starts now that that's kind of where we're at?
I don't know that it makes it better. Like I said, I think that Boise State, Nevada, during the time that I was at Boise State on Coach Peterson's staff, clearly that was a game that was circled every year. You knew it was going to be a war. You knew Coach Alt was going to have his guys ready to go. I think we went to a 4 overtime game one year. They got knocked us off in 2010 when we were I think we were 3 or 4 in the country at that time. I remember that being a pretty exciting week of preparation, and it meant something. And I think that, obviously I credit Boise for the investment that they've made in the sport and positioning themselves to do some other things. But I think that college football on the West Coast is better with Nevada and Boise and Fresno in the same league.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, speaking on the note of Boise State, the 2010 Nevada team, we see the Hall of Fame.
I was on the other side, yeah.
I guess kind of how cool was that to see now that you're...
Yeah, I get to live it almost every day because Virgil is my tight ends coach, and he wears his Mountain West Championship ring around his chain with his Super Bowl ring. And but technically, I do remind him that was actually a 3-way tie that year. So I have one of those too. And so, but I almost tweeted out when they announced they were going in. I didn't end up doing it. I was thinking, oh gosh, a little bit of mixed emotions, but really happy for that group. I mean, that was a crazy night. That was a crazy night. Yeah. So anything can happen. We were up 24-7. I tell people that all the time, man. Like, it wasn't like this was a competitive game all the way through. I mean, this was an epic comeback that they made to make that happen. And so very deserving and probably a long time coming for that group to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. So congrats to them.
Being a secondary coach, like you're one of the ones that have continuity. What have you heard from some of the new head coaches at this conference about the background, everything that you've done?
Well, I know a lot of these guys. I've competed against Coach Ince and Jason Eck and I have known each other for a long time. I'm happy for those guys to get their opportunity. I know they've both worked really, really hard to put themselves in a position where they can be FBS head coaches, and they're both deserving. I think that's these guys have accomplished a lot. I mean, Matt's a multiple-time national champion, and Jason obviously is got the Idaho program rolling while he was there, and so. I think it's a long time coming. I think they're both really, really good football coaches, and their opportunity was going to come sooner or later, and so I'm happy for them.
Coach, you talked about earlier about some of the changes with the pack breaking up and now non-West teams moving back. All these changes that have gone on over the last 4 or 5 years, do you really think that these changes, the decisions that were made by university presidents, the NCAA, TV executives, really had the best interests of the student athletes in mind?
I mean, that's a little bit of a loaded question. I think that when decisions are being made about college football, everybody talks about, well, gosh, this we don't like what's going on in college football, and then in the next sentence you'll hear somebody say, well, the game's never been stronger. Look at our viewership. Look at this and that. Unfortunately, we're talking about the tip of the iceberg, right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about those Power 5 programs, those 12 teams that are going to the CFP, and maybe a handful of others, right? But when you start getting a little bit deeper on that iceberg and you look what's under the surface, participation in high school sports is going down, high school football in particular. Okay, that's a problem for our future. All right, you're hurting the Division IIs, the Division IIIs, the NAIAs. The FCS is not the same product that it was, and that's. I love this game, and I want this game to be good from the top to the bottom. And the stronger football is at the high school level, the better it's going to be at the pinnacle. And we can't forget that. And so I think that's where, you talk specifically about student-athlete welfare. The student-athletes are now benefiting greatly from some of these changes, right? From a financial standpoint and the ability to move freely from school to school. And so I think that part of it's obviously a positive for them. I think that if you want to say, hey, we're trying to create an educational environment that's going to allow these kids to do well, pushing the season deeper and deeper and deeper into the next semester, and having them travel across the country to miss class, and as they have to do in the Big Ten. I don't know that that's a positive for them.
Tim, you just talked about all these. You said 30 years, but there are even more than that. Any changes now, especially rosters. It's just now something called designated student athlete.
Yeah.
It means you can increase your roster. First, you have to lower your roster. Now you can increase it.
Right.
How does that work for you, and how does it make so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, everybody's got to manage. I mean, there's no one size fits all. And we probably aren't going to sit down in a room and say, hey, how you doing this? How you doing that? Unfortunately, we probably would love to, but that's not going to happen, I don't think, anytime soon. So everybody's kind of got to figure out what works for them. And so the designated student athlete, what that's saying is that if a student athlete was cut from, let's just grab a school out there, Iowa, okay? And the reason that he was cut from the roster was because of roster limits. Then he can be added to another roster and not have that count against the 105. So they're trying to create a little bit of a cushion, a little bit of a soft landing for some of these young men that lost opportunities because of the roster limitation, right? And so you might carry 106, 107, 108 this year, and then next year it would go to 105 as a hard cap.
So what is your roster looking like? Did they increase your school increase its scholarship?
No, we stayed at 85. Now we can use equivalencies now, which you couldn't before. So
the 85 is as equivalencies.
So like a 1.0 FTE, and let's say that what's your name? Elisa? Okay, she's a really good student, and she gets a Western undergraduate exchange scholarship, so that becomes a 0.71 on my books, and now I can use that 0.19 somewhere else, if that makes sense. So you can expand, like you may have 85, but you can get it to a certain number, depending on academic aid. It'd be aid that would be available to any student at that institution. Yeah, there's a lot of nuances to this now.
So
Again, how tall big will your roster be then?
How big will my roster be? I'm going to stay right around 105. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we have 105 on the roster right now. We have to be at 105. I might add a guy maybe next week or something like that, right before just a camp ad, but we have to be at 105 or have somebody that has a designated student athlete tag by their name by the time that we play Penn State on August 30th. One celebrity to a football game. Gosh, I need to spend more time doing celebrity stuff. I don't know. I'd say Matthew McConaughey, but I got to stand next to him on the sideline at Texas a bunch. He was a pretty interesting dude. Yeah, I don't know. See, the thing that you got to remember is this, and you can print this or whatever, is that you keep asking us 50-year-old plus guys questions like this, and we're not used to that. Our brains don't work like that. But yeah, we'll go with. I'll go with Chris Peterson. Is he a celebrity? Yeah, there you go. I'll bring Chris. Yeah.
Can you talk about special teams a little bit and just how much that's also been an emphasis?
Yeah, but that cost us games last year. There's no question about it. And so we've done a couple of things. Number one, we went out and we invested in specialists. We signed a U.S. Army All-American long snapper to replace our graduating long snapper. We went and got a D2 All-American kicker. We brought in another combo guy who's got experience, played at UConn. And then we went out and went to Australia and got a punter that we feel like can be a game changer for us. And so number one was invest in the specialist. Number two was to move B.J. Robertson from a recruiting role into senior special teams analyst role. So he and Parker now will handle that, and we have a GA there. So we invested in talent and manpower there, and we've made that an emphasis throughout our off-season workouts.
Just how important, I guess, was it to realize, not just in that particular position, but I guess, shuffling around your staff a little bit, not just keeping things the way that they were to hey, this should work, just like it did in other places.
Yeah, well, I think I hope that I'm always trying to build a better mousetrap. Like, I think that's the job of a leader, right? You got to look around the corner and say, what's our next challenge, and how do I meet that challenge? And so what I tried to do was try to put everybody in maybe a more natural spot for them. Moving Tevis to assistant defensive line, moving Nico to inside linebackers. But then I also decided, hey, I want to have a veteran coach and a young coach in each room. Helps with recruiting, helps with them being able to get monitoring their group, whatever. And so I wanted Kane to just focus on organizing and calling the defense. So I moved Joey to kind of just doing all of the back end. But I put Parker in there with him because he played star nickel at Washington State, so that was more of a natural fit for him. Nico obviously was a pretty talented three-time national champion at Alabama playing inside linebacker, but I hired a senior defensive analyst to back him up in Rob Christoph, who coached at San Jose State for quite a while. And so kind of that, Pyam has Tevis, Joey has Parker, Nico has Rob. Everybody kind of has a guy to back him up, and the same thing on the offensive side. With moving Master on the field, I made Mike Lynch the assistant offensive line coach. So we have two full-time offensive line coaches, which is really needed with a group that large. Helps in recruiting and helps on the field. When I moved David to coordinator, we went and hired Matt Wade, who'd been the quarterback coach at Fresno State previously and was on Tedford's staff. And now David can just focus on putting the pieces of the game plan together and communicating the vision and mission of the offense, and a quarterback's get somebody that's just specifically there for them, and I think that's been really important too. So that was kind of how we tried to massage to, use the talents of the people in the building to a higher degree.
What does a Nevada running back look like in your eyes? We've asked Jim Astro
Yeah.
question, he said it's a mentality.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a mindset. I do think that, running backs have to be some of the physically toughest guys on your roster. Like, those guys have 11 dudes trying to rip their head off every time they touch the football. And so, it's a violent collision position, but they're carrying the ball, so they're carrying the entire program every time they touch it. And so they have to, be a willing blocker in protection. They've got to have the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. They've got to be physical between the tackles. They've got to be dynamic in space. But at the end of the day, it is a mindset. It's what it is. Like, coach, I want the rock. Let's go. We need 2 yards. We need a yard. Whatever it is, they'll get it done. And that's when I think of a Nevada back, I think accountable. tremendously well. I mean, he's a very versatile player. He's good out of the backfield. He's a dynamic runner. I think Carter Jackson, as a true freshman, has got a chance to make some noise. You got kind of the old dogs in Ashton Hayes and Caleb Ramsey in that room that are going to bring real value to us, and we got a couple other freshmen that I think will bring some value as well.
Getting to December for
That is big. Yeah, I don't think people fully understand. I mean, we were able to run the ball consistently against pretty much anybody until he broke his foot against Minnesota, and we did not have the right guy behind him, and having him back is going to be good. But we also developed depth in that room. You know, we signed a young man named Jet Carpenter who's got a lot of versatility. We added a transfer from Oklahoma State and Luke McIndoe, and then we got a true freshman in DJ Asiasi that I think can play this year. And so, we learned a lesson. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but hey, you got to do what you got to do year one.
And then in the receiver room too, I mean, having Marcus Felton back and Sean Brown and
Yep.
the second, it seemed like they're kind of growing into it.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with the maturity and the growth of both of those guys, both Marshawn and Nate. Marcus is a steady Eddie leader. Charles Brown is a great leader in that room, and he's fully healthy. He's probably the fastest player on our team right now. Well, if you look at the GPS numbers, that would say that. And then you got a couple transfers like we're always going to have. You got a Jordan Brown who's a dynamic player, man. He's a good football player, and I like where he's at right now. And Dakota Thomas is a kid who's kind of played all over, but he brings some maturity to that group as well. And then kid named Zedekiah Ambrosio, the kid from Tempview that is a Hawaiian kid. Like he did some stuff in the spring that kind of turned our heads, as did Dejan Calamon, Whoopty. Like, that guy had a really good spring. And so we may not have on paper who like we did last year, well, this guy's our number one, this guy's our 1B. That'll have to emerge as fall camp and the season goes on, but we're a deeper, more talented wide receiver and a faster group. And so that's a good thing.
Coach, can I ask you about the Penn State game you mentioned earlier? What are the logistics of traveling across the country like that? There was a lot made last year. UCLA traveling over and flying to State College and fly to Harrisburg and bus up. A lot of complaints about that. You guys looked at that at all? And then also, how do you approach this game with your players as far as how do you talk about this game going out playing in front of 107,000 people? Is this an opportunity for them, or is this just another game?
No, I think that's, I think that you look at it and you go, that's kind of one of the shrines of college football, So if you're a college football player or coach or fan, that's kind of somewhere on your bucket list, right? The only thing that would be better if it was a whiteout, right? So I think that's going to be a really cool opportunity. The travel part of it, we had to go to Troy, Alabama last year. We also go to the island every other year, not always, but generally speaking. And so, we've tried to do it a bunch of different ways. Do you go a day early? Do you not go a day early? Last year we went a day early to Troy, went a day early to Hawaii. We had different results. I think that we're going to go. We're going to kind of stay on Pacific time, but we're just going to leave earlier on Friday. We'll go to the stadium, which we don't normally do. We'll get the ambiance drill out of the way. I think that's important for them to see the place. And okay, I'm big-eyed, but when I come here tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I'm ready to roll. And then you remind them that, hey, this is an opportunity for us to go and put our brand out there on a national stage. You have individual aspirations. Do your job really, really well. And then you'll be recognized for that. And let's go and embrace the opportunity to compete against one of the best teams in the country and put our brand out there against them. But remember this, fellas, it's one game. And I think that's the mindset.
I know it's in the weeds a little bit, but do you know yet if you're going to be able to fly into State College, or if you're going to
No, I think we will be able to fly into State College, yeah. Yeah, we may have to. The only downside is we may have to do like a refuel thing, so touch and go.